Ethan Rivera had flour on his hands and doubt in his heart as he kneaded the dough in his grandmother's old kitchen. The wooden countertops bore the scars of 1,000 meals, each groove a testament to the woman who had taught him that cooking was love made visible. Outside, the autumn rain tapped against the windows of Millbrook, a town where everyone knew everyone's business. And right now, the biggest gossip was about him, the mechanic who thought he could cook. At the center of that gossip was Victoria Kane. She had returned to Millbrook 3 months ago, supposedly to visit family, but everyone knew the real reason. Her marriage to a prominent restaurateur in New York had crumbled spectacularly, splashed across food blogs and society pages. She'd been a celebrated food critic, the woman whose reviews could make or break establishments across the eastern seaboard. Now she sat on the judging panel for Millbrook's Harvest Cooking Festival, and she'd made her opinions about local talent abundantly clear. Ethan had been at Morrison's diner when she'd said it, her voice carrying across the vinyl booths. Small-town cooking is charming, I suppose, but it lacks sophistication. It's all comfort and no craft. Their eyes had met across the room. Something flickered between them, recognition, perhaps, of a shared stubbornness. What about Ethan's cooking? Old Mrs. Chen had challenged. He makes his grandmother's recipes. Victoria's laugh was like cut glass. I'm sure it's lovely for potlucks. But this is a competition. You need more than nostalgia to win. The words had burned, not because they were cruel, but because part of him feared they were true. He was self-taught, learning from handwritten recipe cards and Sunday dinners. What did he know about gastronomy, about molecular cuisine, about any of the things that impressed critics like Victoria Kane? But that night, alone in his grandmother's kitchen, Ethan had made a decision. He would enter the festival. Not to prove Victoria wrong, exactly, but to prove something to himself. Now, 2 weeks later, he was committed. The other contestants were formidable. Chef Antoine from the French bistro 2 towns over, the Instagram-famous food truck owner, the culinary school graduate with her modernist techniques. And then there was him, with his grandmother's recipe for albondigas and chipotle, a dish he'd eaten every Sunday of his childhood. His phone buzzed. A text from his brother. Mom says you're crazy. Victoria Kane ate at 11 Madison Park. What are you thinking? Ethan smiled, rolling the meatballs with practiced hands. He wasn't thinking. He was feeling. He was remembering his grandmother's wrinkled hands guiding his, teaching him that the secret ingredient wasn't listed in any recipe. It was intention. It was soul. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets of Millbrook clean, preparing the town for something it didn't yet know was coming, a reckoning, a revelation, and perhaps the beginning of something unexpected. Victoria stood before her hotel mirror, examining the woman staring back. At 34, she looked polished, professional, untouchable. Exactly what she'd cultivated after the divorce. Her phone lit up with another message from her ex-husband. She deleted it without reading. The whiskey in her glass was smooth, expensive, nothing like the drink served at Millbrook's only bar. Yet she found herself missing the bar's worn leather stools, the way the bartender remembered everyone's order, the simplicity of a place where people weren't performing. Her laptop displayed tomorrow's contestant list. When she reached Ethan Rivera's name, she hesitated. She'd been unnecessarily harsh at the diner. She knew it even as the words left her mouth. But something about him had unsettled her. The quiet confidence in his eyes, the way he hadn't argued or defended himself, just smiled and walked away. It reminded her of before. Before the marriage to Jonathan Kane, celebrity chef and serial philanderer. Before she'd learned that her palate for food was sharper than her judgment of character. Before she'd caught him with her assistant in the wine cellar of his flagship restaurant. Victoria drained her glass. A knock at her door startled her. Through the peephole, she saw him, Ethan Rivera, rain-dampened and hesitant. "What are you doing here?" she asked, opening the door despite herself. "I came to apologize," he said, rain dripping from his dark hair. "For whatever I did to make you dislike me so much." "You didn't," she started, then stopped. "How did you know which room?" "Small town. The desk clerk is my cousin." Despite herself, Victoria laughed. "Of course she is." They stood in the doorway, the space between them charged with something neither wanted to name. He looked different away from the diner, younger somehow, more vulnerable. "You didn't do anything," Victoria said finally. "I was projecting. My marriage ended badly, and I've been," she trailed off, "taking it out on everyone else." "Something like that." Ethan stepped closer, and Victoria caught the scent of cinnamon and smoke clinging to his clothes. "For what it's worth," he said softly, "I think your ex-husband was an idiot." The words hung between them. Victoria's breath caught. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, but she didn't step back. "I'm judging tomorrow." "I know." His eyes held hers. "I should go." But neither of them moved. The first kiss was tentative, questioning. The second was anything but. Victoria pulled him inside, kicking the door shut, her hands finding the buttons of his shirt even as his fingers tangled in her hair. They stumbled toward the bed, a tangle of want and wrongness, and a desperate need to feel something real. His mouth traced her collarbone while she arched against him, months of loneliness and hurt melting under the heat of his touch. "This is a terrible idea," she gasped as his hands slid under her blouse. "The worst," he agreed, but his lips were already finding hers again. They fell into each other like people drowning, seeking air. In the tangle of sheets and whispered breaths, Victoria let herself forget about tomorrow, about judging, about all the rules she'd built around herself. For one night, she just felt. When morning came, Ethan was gone. Only the indent on the pillow remained, and a note on hotel stationery. "I don't regret this. I hope you don't either. See you at the contest." Victoria sat up, her body still humming with the memory of his touch, her mind racing with the impossibility of what she had to do next. She had to judge his cooking while pretending last night never happened. The Millbrook Community Center had been transformed. White tablecloths covered long tables, cameras from the local news station perched in corners, and the autumn sun streamed through tall windows, illuminating the 6 cooking stations arranged in a semicircle. Victoria took her seat at the judge's table, flanked by the mayor and the owner of the state's most popular food magazine. She wore her armor, a crisp black suit, her hair pulled back severely, her expression neutral. She refused to look at Station 3, where Ethan was setting up. The morning passed in a blur of seared scallops and deconstructed salads, foams and reductions and plates that looked like modern art. Chef Antoine presented a coq au vin that was technically perfect. The food truck owner offered Korean-Mexican fusion tacos that made the crowd gasp with delight. Victoria tasted, noted, scored. Professional. Detached. Exactly what a judge should be. Then it was Ethan's turn. He approached the judging table carrying a simple clay pot, the kind his grandmother might have used. Steam rose from it, carrying with it the scent of chipotle, tomato, cumin, nothing fancy, nothing revolutionary. Just home. Their eyes met for half a second. Victoria saw everything there. Last night's tangled sheets, this morning's absence, the question neither of them could ask. Now what? "Albondigas in chipotle," Ethan said, his voice steady. "My grandmother's recipe." He ladled the stew into her bowl. Meatballs swimming in a deep red sauce, flecked with cilantro and onion. Beside it, he placed a warm corn tortilla, handmade, still steaming. Victoria picked up her spoon. The audience was silent. She could feel their anticipation, their hope for the local boy to succeed. She could feel Ethan's eyes on her, though he'd stepped back professionally. She could feel the weight of last night in every breath. She took one bite. The world stopped. It wasn't just food. It was memory incarnate. The meatballs were tender, the spices complex but not overwhelming, smoky, slightly sweet, with a heat that built slowly. But beneath the technique, beneath the perfect balance of flavors, there was something else. There was love. She could taste the hours of stirring, the care in each rolled meatball, the intention in every chopped onion. She could taste his grandmother's hands guiding his, decades of Sunday dinners, laughter around a worn kitchen table. She could taste what he'd been trying to tell her last night, when words failed. This is who I am. This is what I offer. Victoria took another bite. Then another. The tears surprised her. They ran down her cheeks before she could stop them, and suddenly she wasn't a critic anymore, wasn't the woman who'd been betrayed and rebuilt herself into something harder. She was just someone tasting truth. "Miss Kane?" the mayor prompted gently. "Your score?" Victoria set down her spoon with a trembling hand. She looked at Ethan, really looked at him, and saw him seeing her. Not the critic, not the armor, but the woman underneath. "I need a moment," she said, her voice thick. She stood abruptly and walked toward the bathroom, aware of the whispers following her. In the harsh fluorescent light, she gripped the sink and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. The food wasn't just good. It was a revelation. It was everything she'd forgotten about why she'd fallen in love with cooking in the first place. Before the industry, before Jonathan, before she'd learned to weaponize her palate. A knock. "Victoria?" Ethan's voice, soft with concern. She opened the door. They stood in the narrow hallway outside the bathrooms, the sounds of the contest muffled by walls and distance. Ethan's chef's coat was splattered with sauce, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I can't do this," Victoria whispered. "I can't judge fairly. Last night was real," Ethan interrupted. "This is real. Don't let fear make you lie about what you tasted. You don't understand. In my world, this is unethical. I slept with a contestant. I should recuse myself. Then recuse yourself." He stepped closer. "But don't tell me you didn't taste what you tasted. Don't tell me that dish didn't move you." Victoria's hand shook. "It did. God, Ethan, it did. But how can anyone trust my judgment now? How can I trust it? Maybe I'm giving you points because of last night. Maybe." He took her hands in his touch gentle but firm. "You know that's not true. I saw your face. You weren't tasting with your body, Victoria. You were tasting with your soul." The words broke something open inside her. She thought of Jonathan, who'd cooked for acclaim, for stars, for ego. She thought of the hundreds of restaurants she'd reviewed, the way food had become performance, strategy, competition. When had she forgotten that it could also be communion? "I've been so angry," she admitted. "At Jonathan, at myself, at the whole industry. I use my reviews like weapons. I forgot that food is supposed to bring people together, not tear them apart." Ethan's thumb traced her knuckles. "Then remember. Right now. Be honest about what you tasted, not because of last night, but despite it. What if we're wrong about this? About us? We might be." His smile was sad. "But we won't know unless we're brave enough to find out." Victoria looked into his eyes and saw something she hadn't seen in years. A man who meant what he said, who offered himself without pretense or manipulation. She kissed him then, there in the hallway, a kiss that tasted of chipotle and tears and terrifying hope. When they broke apart, she said, "I need to go back. I need to finish judging." "I know. And then we need to talk. Really talk. I know that too." They returned separately. Victoria retook her seat at the judge's table, her spine straight, her decision made. When it came time for final scores, she didn't hesitate. "The technical skill displayed today was impressive across the board," she began, her voice carrying through the room. "But cooking isn't just about technique. It's about truth. It's about taking ingredients and transforming them into something that speaks to the human experience." She paused, meeting Ethan's eyes across the room. Ethan Rivera's albondigas and chipotle was perfect in its simplicity. The spices were balanced, the meatballs tender, the sauce complex. But what elevated this dish beyond the technical was its honesty. It didn't try to be something it wasn't. It honored its origins while celebrating them. She wrote her score. A perfect 10. The mayor raised his eyebrows. The other judge nodded slowly in agreement. When all scores were tallied, Ethan had won by a narrow margin. The crowd erupted in applause. Ethan's mother rushed forward to embrace him, tears streaming. His brother slapped his back. The whole town celebrated their local hero. But Ethan was looking at Victoria. And Victoria was smiling. 3 months later, snow fell gently on Millbrook's main street. Inside Ethan's newly opened restaurant, a small, intimate space with mismatched chairs and his grandmother's paintings on the walls, Victoria sat at the corner table, her laptop open, composing her review. But this time, the words came differently. "Rivera's table," she wrote, "is not trying to be anything other than what it is, a love letter to family, memory, and the revolutionary act of cooking with intention. Chef Ethan Rivera has created something rare in modern dining, a space where technique serves emotion, not ego." She paused, watching him through the kitchen window. He was teaching his sous chef, a teenager from town, how to properly season meatballs, his hands patient, his voice encouraging. The same hands that had held her last night in his grandmother's house. The house he was slowly renovating into their home. The same voice that whispered against her skin about futures and possibilities. "How's the review coming?" Ethan asked, bringing her a cup of Mexican hot chocolate, its cinnamon steam curling in the air. "Honestly?" Victoria closed the laptop. "I keep wanting to write about how you make me feel instead of how the food tastes. And how do I make you feel?" She pulled him down for a kiss, tasting chocolate and promise. "Like I'm home." The restaurant's front door chimed. Their first reservation of the evening, a couple celebrating an anniversary. Victoria watched Ethan greet them, saw the way he made them feel welcome, special scene. This was his gift, she realized. Not just cooking, but connection. The ability to feed both body and soul. Her phone buzzed. An email from a New York publisher. "We'd love to discuss your book proposal, Reclaiming the Table, A Food Critic's Journey Home." Victoria smiled. 6 months ago, she couldn't have imagined this life. Living in Millbrook, loving a mechanic-turned-chef, writing about food as nourishment instead of competition. Her ex-husband had called it professional suicide when she'd announced she was leaving the New York food scene. But he'd been wrong. This wasn't death. It was resurrection. "Penny for your thoughts?" Ethan returned, settling beside her during a lull. "Just thinking about recipes," she said. "How they're passed down, changed, adapted. How my grandmother had her version of albondigas, and your grandmother had hers, and someday maybe we'll create ours." "Someday?" Ethan's hand found hers under the table. "I was hoping for sooner than that." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Victoria's breath caught. The restaurant around them seemed to blur, the other diners fading into soft focus. "I know it's fast," Ethan said. "I know all the reasons this might be crazy. But Victoria Kane, you taught me that the best recipes are the ones that taste like truth. And this is the truest thing I've ever known." She opened the box. Inside, a simple silver band engraved with words in Spanish. Con amor se hace todo. With love, everything is made, she translated, tears streaming. Will you marry me? Victoria thought about the woman she'd been, bitter, armored, using criticism as a shield. She thought about the woman she was becoming, softer, braver, willing to taste life fully even when it might hurt. She thought about Ethan's cooking, the way it had cracked her open that first day, forcing her to remember what mattered. Yes, she whispered. Yes, 1,000 times yes. As they kissed, the restaurant around them erupted in applause. The anniversary couple, the kitchen staff, the teenagers on a first date, all of them witnessing this moment, this recipe for love made visible. Outside, snow continued to fall on Millbrook, covering everything in fresh white, each flake unique but part of something larger, something beautiful. Inside Rivera's table, Ethan Rivera and Victoria Kane held each other close, both of them finally understanding the secret ingredient that had been missing all along. Not sophistication, not technique, not fame or accolades or critical acclaim. Just love, honest and simple and true. The kind that sustained you. The kind that tasted like home. The end.